Okay, we have a good few more on board there now. So hi everybody, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for a webinar on Sage Intacct. Intacct is Sage's powerful, fully cloud-based financial management platform designed for growing businesses. My name's Howard Murphy, Business Development Manager for DB Computer Solutions. Steve Johnson, who joins us this afternoon, I should say, nearly said morning, will be running through the features of Sage Intacct and its advantages to your own business. So look, before we join Steve, let me just remind you who DB Computer Solutions are. So as per our slide here, due to our continued growth, DB were recently acquired by the Point Services Group, one of Sage's largest business partners globally. As a result, we've expanded on our already extensive Sage portfolio with Sage Intacct. We're simply offering an overview here today, but we'd be very happy to organize a one-to-one session where we can properly talk to you about your business and offer you a fuller demonstration then as it relates directly to you. Before I hand you over to Steve, I just remind everybody to put forward any questions through the Q&A facility via Teams or through the chat, or you can send me an email afterwards as well if you think of any questions that you don't think of while you're actually online. And we'll do our level best to give you the answers at the end of this session and afterward. I'd also point out that if your shared screen is too small, I'd ask you to select View at the top of the screen in Teams and choose Focus on Content together with, I think there's some advanced options in there as well, and that'll show the full screen to give you the best view possible. And so I'm going to hand it over to Steve to let you look through it, and then we'll pick up during the actual demonstration, and towards the end we'll answer some questions. So good morning once more, Steve.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sarah, for the intro there, Howard. So just to confirm, you can see my screen now, Howard. Probably the best one to let me know. So
can indeed.
Fantastic. Brilliant. So my name is Steve Johnson. I'm a Senior Partner Growth Manager at Sage. I've got the pleasure of working with Intacct partners such as DB Computing Services to bring Sage Intacct to market. So I've got probably one of the best jobs at Sage. I get to show off what is our flagship product, the fancy bit of kit, if you like. And what we're going to do today is take you through a bit of an overview of some of the high-level features. There's absolutely not enough time today to go through all of the functionality and all of the benefits. You're just going to pick out some of the high-level things that tend to apply to most customers. What we would love to do, though, if anybody's interested today, if anybody sees anything where they think actually that could potentially help us as a business, reach out to Howard or myself or any of the other guys at DB, and we'll be happy to arrange a more tailored demonstration and spend some more one-to-one time with you today. Sorry, another date. But what we're going to focus on today is maybe just give you a very brief introduction to what Sage Intacct is, where it's come from. I want to talk a bit about our dimensional accounting and our dashboards and reporting. It's probably one of the big benefits of using Sage Intacct. I want to talk a little bit about multi-entity and consolidation, because that's another really big thing for us. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about AI and automation, something which I'm sure you're all starting to hear more and more when you speak about accountancy software and software in general. So in terms of what Intacct is, I'm probably best to start off by saying what it isn't. So previously with Sage, we try to be all things to all people. So a lot of our products, they try and cater for just about every customer that's out there in the world. Sage Intacct, we're very, very clear about what we are. So we provide best-in-class financials on a best-in-class cloud platform. We're very, very focused on being best-in-class for financials. So you won't see an Intacct CRM. There isn't an Intacct payroll. We're laser focused on what we do best. And what we've got across the suite there is what we would class as deep cross-industry functionality. So all the things I'm going to show you today would apply to people in just about any industry sector. What we also have, though, is through our marketplace network and through our own specialist modules that we add, very, very specific vertical solutions and experience and success in key verticals and micro verticals, and we're expanding that out all of the time. So what we'll touch on when we come back to you is probably the later date is another presentation around Intacct for certain industries. But what we'd love to do is have a conversation with you about how Intacct could help you in your business. Today it's quite generic. It's more of an overview. So we're going to focus a lot around that more core finance stuff, and as I say, some of the AI pieces that live within there. So in terms of what you get with Sage Intacct and what it's all about, so it is native cloud. So by that, what we mean is it was written as a cloud solution. It's not like one of our older platforms where we've taken a desktop solution and pushed that into the cloud. This was designed to be a cloud solution from day one. One of the things we'll talk about very early on is going to be the dimensional accounting nature of the system. So we're moving away from a traditional chart of accounts to a true dimensional solution. So we'll spend a bit of time talking about that today. But really what it's about is giving you real-time information to make decisions in your business. So it is very much seen as a CFO-focused solution. So it's for finance professionals that want to get meaningful information out of a solution. In terms of what you get, the core modules there, it's the kind of stuff I'm sure you're used to seeing in an account solution, but just a couple of things to point out. As well as getting your accounts receivable and accounts payable, we're also giving you your purchasing and order management that goes in there as well. And reporting and dashboards are included as standard. So you don't need to go and buy a BI solution or anything like that to be able to get anything out of Sage Intacct. It's all about the information that you're able to extract from the solution. So the first thing we're going to talk about are dimensions, dashboards and reporting. So this is fundamental to Sage Intacct, and the value that we add here would we add that with every customer that uses the solution. Tend to find that one of the main draws for people coming over to Sage Intacct is they're wanting to analyze things in more ways than they currently can with the solution that they have now. So we'll have a look at some of this stuff when we get into dashboards, but it's all about harnessing the dimensions that we have to give you the levels of analysis that you need. So we're very much taking customers from this world that we see on the screen here now, where we're using our chart of accounts, not just to drive our statutory reporting, but we're also using it to get other insights for the business. So we're tracking things like location through cost center codes and also nominal codes. We're tracking departments. In this instance, we're a project-based business, so we have projects to consider. So I'm sure a lot of you on the phone, on the call today will recognize this as a fairly familiar scenario. Because we're having to add extra levels of analysis into our chart of accounts, it ends up bloated over time. So we see this a lot. So one of the big things we do when we move you over to Sage Intacct is we give you the opportunity to streamline your chart of accounts. But as well as streamlining it, you've got the dimensions that we bring in that then give you that option to slice and dice the data any way that you wish. So if you just think about these as tags that we would apply to any of our transactions in the system, whether that would be a sales invoice, a purchase invoice, a journal, any transaction whatsoever will have dimensions that you can tag against that. And the ones that are listed under standard on the screen are the ones that every customer gets just out of the box. So it's the things you might expect to see, like customers and suppliers, departments, but you've got other things in there. You know, we've got locations, we've got items. Class is a really interesting one that's given to you as a floating dimension. So you can rename or rename any of these, but class is generally the one we give to customers to say, well, what's the thing that in your business you want to do a P&L by, or you want to analyze as a trend that, you know, we wouldn't have thought of, and that's class to get you out of that one. You also have, as you add extra modules, you unlock additional dimensions. So say, for example, you were to buy our project costing module, you would get the project dimension. If you were to take on inventory, you get the warehouse dimension. The ability there is to add additional user-defined dimensions as well, so you can grow this out. So certain types of business are really drawn to us. We do very, very well with not-for-profit organisations, just simply the fact that we've got so many different levels of analysis that we can apply for tracking funds and grants and things like that. And then you can add any more as you go along if you wish to do so. So that's the thing that we're going to go off and have a look at now, guys. So if you just give me a moment, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen there. Howard, I'm going to ask you again as my assistant, my able assistant. Can you see my dashboard screen?
Can indeed, yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. So in terms of the dimensions and where they're brought into the solution, we're looking now at a dashboard for Sage Intacct. So very much a fan of using what we would call role-based dashboards. So in this instance, I'm logged in as a financial controller. I've got various different roles that we see within the solution. So we'll come back to financial controller, but today, for example, I was a project manager within the business. I have my own dashboard view, which I can switch over to. So we can see as a project manager, I'm going to be much more interested in things like labour and hours spent. I might want to have a look at the analysis of some of my projects. I'm going to be obsessed with things like margin. And the dimensions that we're working with may differ as well. So we're very much looking at the project dimension at the moment. And if you think about this particular dashboard, we see there we've got those projects as a dimension that we can filter and bring in. So I'm looking at all my projects now. I might want to specifically look at one project or a particular type of grouping. Maybe it's all my fixed fee projects or my time and materials projects. But other dimensions are brought through onto the screen automatically there. So I've got the ability to filter by dimension. So any dashboard that we have within the system, we can start to bring that dimensional information through. So you can see there, I'm looking at the filters that exist for this dashboard. Currently, I've only brought through project and location. I could add department into that as well. So very, very easy to customize these. So we can see we can start to drill that down even further if we need to. But just dropping back over there to the controller dashboard, just to spend a bit of time in that one. So again, we see we've got our dimension filters across the top, so we can bring dimensions in. You could also automatically apply filtering. So if this dashboard was given to somebody and you only wanted them to look at their department or their location or their particular cost center, you can automatically lock that down for them and give them access to only the stuff that makes sense to them. And just to highlight, actually, just before we go any further, my system has a fair bit of complexity built into it. Got a lot of modules switched on. These are the dimensions that I have switched on in my solution. So I've got quite a few on top of the additional 7, and that's because I've got some extra modules turned on today. I mentioned that we've got a one called class that we tend to relabel. I've relabeled mine as channels, which I think made sense to a customer we were speaking to a little while ago. And I've got their different channels of business within here. So we've got them set up. Now, once we've got dimensions in here, we can attach any number of attributes to them. Therefore, we can filter them. We can report on them in various different ways. So anything that you need to capture against them, you can. But what we'll be looking at a bit later on is how we're able to bring this information in to customize things like the reports that we're able to output. So maybe it's a profit and loss by channel would have been nice for this customer to be able to achieve. We can do that really, really easily. But the fact is, because I'm using dimensions, my chart of accounts, which I'll show you now, is actually pretty straightforward and pretty flat. So I'll bring that up for you there. So in terms of complexity, I'm a multinational organization. I'm in about 4 or 5 different countries. We've got 6 different companies. I deal in projects. I deal with contracts. I deal with stock, do all kinds of stuff. But actually, when we look at my chart of accounts, my balance sheet's pretty basic there. Not a lot of complexity lives within there. When we get into my profit and loss, I've got a few extra revenue codes for contracts, just the way that works. But other than that, that's quite a flat chart of accounts. And that is literally just because we're able to tag any transaction in the system with those dimensions to get that information out without having to bloat out the chart of accounts to do so. Go back to my controller dashboard then. So I'm hoping that point's landed in terms of how we use dimensions in the system. Real fundamental thing. We know we take customers from Sage 50, from Zero, from QuickBooks, where you're limited. You maybe have 1 or 2 dimensions that you can bring in. Once you've hit that limit, there's nowhere to go. With us, we don't give those restrictions. So just a few of the nice things to point out while we're having a look at a controller dashboard. So you've probably leapt ahead and started working out what all of these things are, but just to break that down. So in terms of components that we can bring through to a dashboard, across the top line there, I'm using these things called performance cards. If you just think of those as the KPIs for that person's role, so you're giving them easy access to the headline numbers that should matter to them. And we're also, by using the likes of the smiley faces and the ticks and so on, giving them a very quick visual idea of what's happening. So it's all looking very rosy at the moment. We've got lots of smiley faces and green arrows. If things were a less optimistic view, you'd see that straight away. So the KPI thing is to really just draw a person to the information that's relevant to them. Now they can change this, they can manipulate this really easily. So if they want to add things in, remove things, they can. Maybe if they want to play around with what they're looking at on the screen. So for example, their expenses, I might be comparing that to, what am I comparing that to? Budget. I might want to compare it to a prior period, or I might want to compare it to a different budget. I might actually think that the arrows are a bit informal. We're having a bit of a tough week. Let's have some smiley faces or whatever else that we're going to have. very easy for them to manipulate them and move them around, do what they need with them. Sad face all of a sudden. Yeah, so actuals worse than budget. What we'll see there as well is that we're trying to make, or we are making, Intacct's dashboard the hub for all of your finance reporting. We'll have heard these things in the past, but genuinely our customers do that. You get everything into the system and you can report on it and show it in one place. To enable you to do that, we've given you the option of bringing in what we call statistical accounts and statistical journals. This is to give you the ability to bring in things that you're going to need to report on or you're going to need to manage that aren't debits and credits. So in the example we've got here, Oatzilla, my company, they sell breakfast cereal. One of the things they obsessively track every month is how many orders they've placed. It's not a debit or a credit figure. I'm not going to get that necessarily from my accounts receivable. But what I do have is I have an API plugged into my production system, or I have one of my production managers. Every time we get an order in, we're just making a note of that. And therefore, we're able to track that. Now, that is just an increasing or decreasing balance. It's not a debit or credit. And you think about the kind of things you might want to bring in, it's very common for customers to bring in things like their head count. So once you've got the head count in the system, it's useful to have in itself, but you can also then use that to drive further computations. So we might want to look at cost by head, overheads by head, profitability by head. Once that data is in there, you can start to use it to build other clever things. So the obvious thing to point out in terms of what we'll see on a dashboard would be some reports. So I've brought through a P&L report at the moment. So a fairly standard report. I'm looking at budget versus actual with some variance in there. Our customers love the fact that we can drill into reports. So anywhere you see a blue hyperlink, you can drill down into that. So you can go all the way down to transaction level. It might just be a journal in this case. If it's an invoice, you can drill down there. If you've got the required permissions, you spot something that's been posted to the wrong place, no need to go trawling through lists of invoices. You can just go drill straight down and do whatever you need to from here. So it's all real time. You're not having to refresh reports all of the time or rebuild them. Very, very easy to use Report Writer as well, which I'm going to show you in a little while. But in terms of the other things that we can bring through and have appear on our dashboard, I've got an RSS feed from the BBC Bad News, as I call it at the moment, so you can bring things from external sites. I've got ratios, I've got reports, I've got lists. Great thing here in terms of my closing summary to help me with my month-end close. That's actually being superseded at the moment by a piece of AI that automates the whole of your month-end close process and how you distribute work out within your team and monitor progress against that. So this thing's evolving all the time. But various things you can have on there. You can have graphs, you can have charts, you can have lists. Maybe you just want a list of invoices. Can be whatever you need it to be. But what I wanted to do now is just very quickly, very briefly, just start to show you a little bit more about what we can do with that dimensional information. So we're looking at this P&L report at the moment, and it doesn't really go into any dimensional data at all. It's just everything across my group at the moment brought in. If I crack open the report writer, what I'm able to do, just a few things to point out. This is a really easy to use report writer. I certainly wouldn't be doing this if this was Sage 50 or anything like that. I would be asking for trouble, but this one's easy to get on with. So if we have a look at rows, first of all, I think I've already blue-peated this one. What I wanted to have a look at is just bringing some of this dimensional data in to give us a bit more of a granular view on things. So we're just going to pick on revenue today, and I've actually decided to take that down to customer level. Could have done by department. That might make sense as well. I mean, if we're looking at overheads, we might have done that by department. If you have a look at the column side, similarly, and don't worry about too much about taking in everything that's happening on the screen. Again, I've brought through my dimensional information. So I pointed out earlier that I'd relabeled one of my dimensions as channels. So I think the customer that I was speaking to about this was really keen to see a profit and loss by channel. So we can bring that in. Interestingly enough, we can bring in data from as far back as we want. We don't get restrictions. If I wanted to have a report which has got this month, this year on one column, and this month, last year in the next column, we can do that. In terms of things like budgets, you've got any amount of budgets in the system that you can look at. So I might want to analyze this now against my start of year budget. I might want to revise it, budget and report against that, or even against both. We've got the option there. So I've just very quickly just tweaked that. So this one's been brought in to show channel. So what I really did there was just change a couple of the filters to bring some dimensional information through. And what we'll now see is if I launch that report again, Fingers crossed. Not sure what's going on there. Oh, there we go. I think it was my screen rendering. And what we'll now see is the same P&L report. But what we've actually done is we started to take that down to a bit more of a granular level. So if you look at the various different revenue categories, I've now got that broken down by customer. So at a glance, I know that Heart and Vascular Clinic is by far and away our best customer in terms of what they spend. You know, we start to notice various different little trends and things that pop out at us. The big thing though, these guys have got different channels within their business. We've now got a P&L broken down by individual channel. But if you think about the dimensions I showed you, we can just pivot that and move that around any way that we want. If I wanted to do this by customer P&L, we could do. If I wanted to look at a specific location, very, very easily to do anything like that. So I'm just going to pause there before we go on. Have we had any questions come through that are pertinent to the dimension side?
Not just that, but look, a couple of things obviously some people would be interested in, I imagine. Well, the first thing is the fact that it's, you know, it's native cloud. You know, I mean, Sage have some products there, Sage 50 and Sage 200 cloud, which effectively are hybrid solutions, but this is pretty much a full native solution in the actual cloud for our customers. So, you know, the likes of the type of customers interested in this particular package, I think you're getting to it here now with your actual slide. You know, typically that like the idea of consolidation with other companies, multi-entities. Just the fact that you can portray, you know, a lot of financial information gathered as part of the actual accounts directly on screen and making it flexible. I think that, you know, they're the kind of clients that would be interested in, you know, the likes of this solution.
Excellent. So in terms of the multi-entity and consolidation piece, we'll address that one now. So we've talked about dimensional accounting. I would say every Intacct customer makes use of dimensions. It's fundamental to the system. Similarly with the multi-entity and consolidation pieces, we do have some customers who are single company, but they tend to be with us because they've either got a real complexity in their books or they're using us for integrations into other systems, and that's why they're with us. The bulk of our Intacct customers have more than one company and they do consolidation. A huge amount of them have masses of complexity and they're very, very large in terms of their structures. Quite often they're multi-legislation, they're multi-currency. A lot of our customers have multiple accounting standards that they need to adhere to. So maybe it's at one part of the group they're reporting IFRS, the other part they're reporting GAAP, or maybe it's to have different GAAP requirements that they need to deal with. We're very flexible and capable of handling all of that. So after dimensions, I would say the next biggest pull for us in terms of bringing customers on board with the product would be the fact that they're more than one company and they need to manage stuff as a group. So few things to point out. All your entities are on the same instance of Intacct. That's the big fundamental difference, really. So it's not a case of logging in or out. You know, you don't have a company in one database, another company in another one, and we try and put it all together. It all lives in the same instance. So by doing so, that makes everything a lot easier for us. Consolidation is done in a separate book, so that we'll not go too far into this, but there is the concept of reporting books within Sage Intacct. These are lenses, if you like, that you're able to view your information through. Unlimited, you can have as many as you want. So I'll show you that as we go through and have a look in the system. Dimensions can be consolidated as well. One of the big advantages of doing your consolidation within our system, if you use Intacct, is all of that dimensional data translates as well. And it's simple as well in terms of reconciling your intercompany transactions. One of the first things I'll show you will be that side of things. So, hope that wasn't as slick as it was meant to be. All right, I'm assuming we're back in the system now. You can see.
You are, yeah. I can.
Perfect. Good stuff. So, a couple of things to talk about then. So, I kicked that little bit off there by talking about the fact that all of our companies are in one place. We don't have to log in or log out to go between them. What we do instead is we use this thing at the top called the entity picker. So these are my different companies within the organization. Now, if I pick on one, sorry, I haven't got an Irish entity in this one, I don't think, but if I pick on my UK one there, we'll bring up a specific company. Now, what it's done is it's launched me into a new work area. It's very clear that I'm not at group level anymore. Slightly different color window. I can see the company I'm working at. Now, we are looking at the same dashboard, But what we're seeing now is that distilled down to this one particular entity. So if you think now about what we were looking at, and we go back to that, this Oatseller Group top level is effectively the group level. So that's everything brought together and amalgamated. So I'm not going to call this a consolidated P&L down here. But what it is it's an amalgamation of the P&Ls of all my different companies. And why is it not consolidated? Well, I wouldn't say it was consolidated because I haven't dealt with my eliminations and I haven't dealt with my currency losses and gains. But what I do know is for a lot of our customers, actually, you don't necessarily want to do that all the time. You just want to bring things together and have a look at it. So in terms of subscription revenue sales, that figure there, 21,900, that's across the group for that time period. Now, some customers of ours don't deal with eliminations. They don't have multi-currency. So this is their consolidation. They don't really need to go any further than that. But for a lot of our customers, we introduce one of our consolidation modules, which we will come on to in a moment. So the other thing that I talked about is like the fact that this makes life easier, the fact that everything's in one place. So we'll talk about consolidation in a moment. But before we address that, there are other huge advantages to having everything in one place. We deal with a lot of companies who grow and scale. As part of that, they add entities, they add companies all of the time. When you're sharing a chart of accounts, when you're sharing a customer and supplier ledger, when you share all of the other setup and configuration, adding companies on is very, very simple and straightforward. It comes with a much, much smaller footprint than it would have if you had to set them up in their own instance every time. So the only thing you ever really end up doing is putting in anything that's unique or different. So if they have a slightly different chart of accounts, if there's any account groups that aren't in the rest of the group, you can bring them in for them. But generally, it's just a case of cascading down what already exists. If anyone has any concerns around access and security around that, as well as being role-based, we can apply all of our securities and access controls around the dimensions and entities as well. So, if Howard, for example, doesn't work in Oatseller UK, I just simply don't give him access to it. He doesn't see it. If he does work in Oatseller UK, but he only works in the sales department, I could lock it down even further. So yes, you can see Oatseller UK, but you can only see information pertaining to the sales department. So we've got that, concept of role-based security that we can apply, but also it can be, down at the dimension level as well. What I'll show you now, then, before we go in and actually have a look at the consolidation itself, was just to chat about some of the other nice things that we can do because everything's stored in one place. So we talked about things like customers and suppliers. If I want to report on customers and suppliers because they're set up at the top level, it's very, very easy to report on that. And also the inter-entity trading and things that you'll do between companies is a lot simpler. So I've got an example of a journal that I just want to show you to illustrate this point. So it's quite a straightforward journal. I wouldn't get hung up on the multi-currency nature of this, but I took $3,000 and I distributed that amongst the holding companies in the group. So that was the journal that I posted. But because this is in a shared environment and we've got the inter-entity trading switched on, what happens then is Intacct itself will automatically post the balancing journals for us into the other companies. I almost feel like we need a drum roll when we do that bit there for people to kind of catch their breath and think, oh my God, that saves so much time. So generally when I speak to accountants and show them this, there's the obvious time saving. So the fact that you don't have to then log into each of these individual entities and post the journal. The bit that not everyone's willing to admit to, as well as the time saving, it's the accuracy. You can't make a mistake with this. Well, you can, but it's a lot harder to make a mistake. You certainly can't accidentally transpose every these figures wrong. You couldn't accidentally forget to post them. That's all going to happen. And I'm sure anybody on the phone who's honest today and who's been in this situation, if you forget to post one of these balancing journals, you're not going to spot it easily. It's normally something that comes out months later when you go through an audit. So again, a big part of what we're doing with Sage Intacct is giving you the ability to rely on the information that's in the system pretty much at any point in time. We support something that we call the continuous close. We're really, really big on that. So the idea is you should be able to pull reports out of the system and you're in an almost state of readiness all the way through. And a big part of that is being able to post these journals automatically so you know it's done, but also so it's accurate and it's correct so you can rely on that information. And there are a whole host of other tools and automations that exist within Intacct that support that general concept. you know, that rolling close, the continuous close, call it what you might, the idea that you keep your books in a state of readiness as you go along. What I'll touch on now is the actual consolidation functionality itself. So I'll switch over to my consolidation module. Now, it's worth noting that there are a few different ways we can approach consolidation with Sage Intacct. We have 3 separate modules. I'm going to show you today a module that's called Global Consolidation. Our customers never really know what they've got. They just know they've got consolidation. We match the functionality to what they need. The little brother to Global Consolidation is Domestic Consolidation. The only difference is it won't deal with my currency losses and gains, which is a really, really powerful thing. But if you're not multi-currency, you don't need to worry about that. Oh, sorry, if you've not got multiple base currencies. The third tool that we have, so not domestic or global consolidation, is a tool called Advanced Ownership Consolidation. We brought this module out about 3 years ago to enable what at the time was a small group of customers to be able to do their consolidation within the system and not have to do it externally using a third-party tool such as Excel. The use case for this has become much more pressing as we've gone on. So advanced ownership allows you to deal with tiered and shared ownership structures. So our company owns other companies, or our company in your group is not wholly owned by you, and you need to account for that. We're really open about why we've done this, and that's to do with private equity. So private equity is everywhere these days, and we tend to see those advanced ownership structures are much more relevant in a PA scenario. As that's become more and more pressing, and there's more and more of that type of activity, we're seeing more and more of our customers switch to that module. Don't quote me on this. I don't want to mislead anyone, but I do believe we're probably the only account ERP vendor where you can get all of that functionality in one place. Certainly not seen the advanced ownership stuff anywhere else. But in terms of what my organization looks like, I think that's the first thing to touch on. So this is my organization, Oatzilla Group. So we're a very successful group of breakfast cereal companies selling all over the world. I should move us into Ireland now that I'm working with DB, to be fair, so we'll do that at some point. But we can see we're everywhere. We're mainly a US group. We tend to report in US dollars, but not necessarily, as you'll have seen as we've gone through. Various different locations, and one of our companies, the UK one, has a few sub-locations within there. So that's what my organization looks like. Now, in terms of consolidations, because I'm unlimited in terms of the amount of consolidation books that I create, I can view this any way I want. So I'm going to do a whole world consolidation. It's a bit of a no-brainer. I might do an EMEA consolidation. I might be a North America one to bring Canada in with the US. Might do a rest of world one to exclude those guys. I can have as many different views of this as I wish. And the way we do that, and I'm not going to get too technical today, but if we just have a look briefly at these consolidation books, these are those lenses that we create to view the data through. And the interesting thing with Sage Intacct is a lot of these things and processes that we run, like consolidations, we're generally not posting anything to the actual accrual book. We're posting it into that consolidation book. So it's just for reporting purposes. Doesn't have to be, though. If we want to post into the accrual book, we can do. And we do similar things with allocations and things as well. But the one we'll look at would be this global one. So my main one that I tend to use. I'll just pop into that. Just to show you some of the configuration that we get. So obviously choosing which accounting methodology we're going to use, choosing which statistical journals and things that we bring in if we're going to bring a budget in. We give you flexibility around currency. So what do you want to report that in? You can have any currency you want in the system. You can even make your currencies up if you wanted to do so. But the big thing about that is for real currencies, they get linked back to a currency service called Awanda. So we don't charge customers for this. It's a free service. And it just means that all of your currency information is live and up to date within the solution. You don't have to use it. You can switch it off if you'd rather have an average, put your own figures in. You can even pull rates from other places. You know, someone the other day was using Reuters for their rate. It's entirely up to you, but we give you a Awanda for free to use. We give you some flexibility there. You also what you want to use in terms of spot rates and weighted averages and things for the balance sheet and the P&L. This is where we pick the entities that we consolidate. So as I say, you can create as many of these as you want. And you also can choose if you want to consolidate by any specific dimension. Because I am using Awanda, I've just set an override against my asset purchases because I don't want them being revalued. But the main thing really to set up in here is this elimination tab. So we map our eliminations in the general ledger, provided you're not adding general ledger codes all the time. That tends just to be a one-off thing that will run. And that's it really in terms of setup. From there, I'm able to run consolidations. Now, the idea is you probably want to put a schedule in place to run this. So I can go in and I can fire this off manually. So I can go in and run consolidations. We see a period there that needs to be run. I can just fire off consolidate and that'll do that. That'll take me probably about a minute or two to consolidate those companies based on the amount of data I've got in, and I'll get an email to let me know. You can rerun any periods if you want. So again, we're talking about that rolling close. So it's thinking about consolidation, not as something we do once at the end of the month, thinking about something that we do it when we need to do it, when we want to get a more accurate view of things. So as part of that, what we might choose to do is bring in a recurrence. So I might set that to automatically consolidate, say, for the first of the month, maybe set it to running again at a certain time. And off the back of that, we could use that to drive and refresh dashboards or to generate reports even and have those reports emailed out, depending on how you wanted to do that. So just to give you an idea of the art of the possible more than anything. So you don't have to do it this way. This is just how I've got it in my system. But if we have a look, I couldn't see the wood for the trees there. Oops, wrong thing. I have a dashboard, which is really all about consolidations. As I say, this is the art of the possible, really. Me, personally, I would probably have some of these on my controller dashboard, my CFO dashboard, whoever else needed to see them, really. But in this particular instance, what we're looking at is a consolidated balance sheet broken down by entity with a total figure. And again, I've got my US dollars P&L, and then I think I've got my rest of the world in GBP. So it's entirely up to you. And again, these things are drillable. If you want to drill down into the journals, you can. So I'll just pause again before we move on. Howard, have there been any questions come through around the multi-edit, please?
No, not yet, not yet. I'm interested to just sort of introduce and just to explain to people. I mean, you've given a look at the actual front end, how it reports, how it works across multi-entities, and there are other things, of course, that look. I'm not sure if today we're going to cover them, but just to sort of to hint on them as well, are the things like the automated processing elements of the system, and of course some automated invoicing as well. I know some of the clients require or have that particular type of functionality already within their own copy of Sage accounts.
Yeah, that lines me up nicely, actually. I mean, I've got this as AI, but really when we're talking about AI, what we're really getting at is AI and automation. We are the finance leader when it comes to AI and automation. No, but this sounds incredibly arrogant to stand up and say this as a software vendor, but having spent the last 2 weeks looking at competitor analysis, this is true. We are genuinely streets ahead of everybody else at the moment anyway. The big advantage we've got is we are developing and testing finance AI. The other bigger vendors out there, they're developing more of a general AI. So if you look at Microsoft Copilot, for example, that's not a finance AI tool, it's just a general AI tool. So whilst the likes of Oracle and likes of Microsoft are doing really, really clever stuff, it's not necessarily as focused on finance and accounting as we are. So we've got various different things we're on the go at the moment. Some of the stuff that I'm going to show you will be based on generative AI. So we've got a fantastic search tool within the system. I'm going to show you a tool called dynamic variance analysis today. Variance analysis is using agentic AI. So this is where we're going with this now, deploying agents within the solution. So things that will work on your behalf and go off and do things. But I think the thing to get across, this is real. So this isn't, this isn't hype. This isn't vaporware. We have in the last 2 releases released 4 or 5 pieces of AI technology specific to Sage Intacct. So there's a huge drive behind all of this now. We sit with Intacct a little bit smug. We had our first piece of AI go into the system in 2018. So we've had AI well before this was a buzzword or before everybody was getting excited. So whilst other suppliers, and particularly some of the smaller ones, have very much scrabbled around over the last year or so to produce something and get something out there, it's nowhere near as focused or as deep in terms of functionality as what we have. We're even seeing some of our competitors kind of play their hand now and show the fact that they're not really a cloud solution because they can't deploy AI in the way that we've been able to. But all of this really just supports that message and methodology around the rolling close, the continuous close. It all just feeds into that. We've been automating stuff ever since Intacct came out, and this is just the latest line of tools and pieces of kit that we're going to deploy to do that. So in terms of the CTO, Aaron Harris, you guys won't know who he is. If you sign him for Intacct, you'll get to know him pretty quickly. He's very, very hands-on. He's the brains behind the technology. Agentic AI is where he's taken this, so that's where we're going to. We are going to get there quicker than our competition. We're already releasing 3 agents this year, so I'm going to talk to you about one of them. So Copilot variance analysis is a really nice one just to show you guys to go in and kick this off, because it's an easy one to get your head around, and it's obvious in terms of its value. So variance analysis is your tool to help you track budget variance and help you keep on top of that. So what I'm going to do, try and be a bit slicker this time. We'll jump over. There we go. How was that? And I'm not going to do this in my demo environment because it's quite hard to demo some of these things because they fix issues that I don't have. We're logged into a wireframe demo environment now, so you should be able to see like a mock-up of an Outlook box. I'll ask you to suspend disbelief. My name is Emma Penny for the purpose of this part of the demonstration. And I've had an email, so I'm not living in the system. Emma Penny is a department manager. She's in operations. She doesn't live in the finance solution. That's not her role. That's not for her to do. But she does have budget responsibility and she does need to manage that. So Emma's had an email come through from Sage Copilot. So that's just giving us an indication that we need to go into the system and see what's going on. So if I click to go in, it takes us in. I've got my little Copilot icon there. So it's a slightly different screen to the one we were in, but this is Sage Intacct. It's just a slightly different dashboard we're looking at. And if I click into Copilot, it's letting me know I've got some insights. So it's just breadcrumbing me here. It's taking me in. Actually, because I look after 2 departments, we can see I've actually got 2 alerts come through at the same time. We've got 2 that are out of budget. What we can start to do now, though, is get a bit more insight into that. So what's going on and why is it happening? And bear in mind, Emma might not be that much of a finance user. You know, she's got a budget, but it doesn't necessarily mean to say she's a finance head. So she's getting those 2 budgets there with actuals. Straight away, I know I can drill into the actuals if I want to. I can't do it in this demo because it doesn't go that far, but anything in hyperlinked in blue we'd be able to drill into. So straight away, if something's wrong, I can see it from here. You know, if something's just been posted in the wrong place, if somebody's put a transposition error in, we can spot that from there. The other thing I can do is I can look at the prior period analysis, or I can look at a view of a full financial report. I like that financial report. What that gives me is wider context. So yes, this particular account group is out of budget, or this particular department or location. What's happening around that on the P&L? So you start to get a bit of a picture. But the big one, really, the showstopper, is this describe the variance. So this is generated by Copilot based on what it can see. If you guys can read into that, I know the gist of it. The gist of it is we've paid too much in bonus and salaries, and that's why we've got a problem. So it's worked that out, it's told me. I was lucky enough when this came out to be working with a lot of large accountancy firms in the UK, and we give them a little bit of a look at this. We've got accountants in the UK now who are using this to produce client reports. So they just copy and paste it. You know, if they've got to give commentary around budget performance, they'll just copy and paste it from Intacct. So powerful. So this is the kind of stuff that we're getting at now in terms of automation to make your life easier. So that was Emma as a user. The other view we've got of this, if I can get into it, it lets me go back. A different type of user. So in this case, I'm logged in as a financial controller. So I think it's Steve, the financial controller. Not getting alert as such, but if I go into my Copilot, I can start to see things as well. So I've got budget variances year to date. I can see against last month. I can go in and get this information. So again, similarly, I can get full financial reports, but again, I can ask it to describe the variance. So I'm going to a board meeting tomorrow. I've got the ability to talk to the board about exactly what's going on because I can see it. You know, where's that underperformance coming from? So that was it in terms of the demonstration of the functionality we're going to go through. I think we landed maybe a minute or two ahead of time there.
Yeah, I think so.
What I'll do then, we'll jump back over. Did anybody have any questions? And we're quite happy to bring people off mute if you'd rather talk, or if you want to chuck anything into the chat.
Yeah, and if it's a case that anybody has any queries, I just share my own screen here actually. If anybody has any queries or they want to have a quick chat with ourselves and a one-to-one on what they're working with currently and how we can improve it with the likes of Sage Intacct, I'd suggest reach out on any of the contact pieces we have here. But thanks very much for that, Stephen. That gave us a good sort of overview of it. Obviously, you could look into this in a over a much longer period on the different elements and the different facets of the system itself. And on top of that as well, of course, one of the things we haven't mentioned is within the Sage marketplace, there's so many other connections that you have there to other items as well. Isn't that correct?
That's fair to say, yeah, we really scratched the surface. I've very much focused today on the Intacct functionality that brings people to us. But you bang on, like the other main reason that people will move to Intacct is our integration approach. The fact that we've got a really strong marketplace and we build out those best of breed solutions. So I would encourage anybody who's sitting there in a solution at the moment where you've got one or two, more than two integrations into other solutions, or where you've got solutions that you can't integrate into, have a chat with us and see if we can make that any better for you.
Yeah, 100%. So what I'll do is we haven't got questions coming through at the moment, but what we will do is we'll leave the event open slightly for a bit more time anyway, so people can enter in any other queries, and then as we get them, we'll send back answers to everybody. Regardless of the actual query, just in case we hit something that somebody else forgets to ask anyway. Like I say, reach out to me. You contact me at howard.murphy@dbcomp.ie or sales@dbcomp.ie. You can call us on the phone number there as well. Be happy to give you a direct demonstration one-to-one and talk to you directly about your current processes as it stands. Failing that, just want to thank everybody for attending today, and to thank yourself, Stephen, for actually giving us a very good, decent overview of the what you can expect with Sage Intacct.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to present, and hopefully speak to some of you in the near future.
Yeah, and what we'll do is we'll forward a copy of the link back to everybody so that you can have a look in your own time, or you can share it with somebody else who wasn't able to attend today. And yeah, if they have any questions, you have all the contact details there. So without further ado, thank you very much for everybody, and all the best. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much.